Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Squads for Noobs. Today we're going to be talking about bounty hunters, more specifically Bossk bounty hunters. This is the most common form, most popular, and my favorite personally of bounty hunters, aside from, Jabba the Hutt, a galactic legend. It's a very flexible faction, and different bounty hunters can play different roles. I'm going to be mainly focusing on a version that has Boba Fett and Jango Fett because I think those are the most earliest accessible, easily geared, that don't require Kyrotechs, and they're good across a lot of different game modes. The absolute core is Bossk, Greef, and the Mandalorian, and that's kind of the comp you want to use in 3v3. Other versions, the one I use the most on my main account as an endgamer is Fennec, Shand, and Zam Wessel. Zam Wessel's only good with her Omicron, so you don't need to worry about her at all if you don't have the Omicron. And Fennec requires Kyrotech. She's awesome, but she requires Kyrotech. I will talk about her kit some. But for the moment, let's stick with the Fets. And I'm going to be talking about the mechanics of each character, Zeta priority order, Relic priority order. There's only one real Omicron to talk about, so not really an order for that. Then we're going to look at mods, counters, and a demonstration, all that kind of stuff. So let's get into it, starting with Mr. Bossk. Now, the most important thing about Bossk, besides his tankiness, is his leadership ability. I love this leadership. It's the most just broadly valuable across the game. Bounty Hunter allies gain 50% max protection, that's a lot, and 50% tenacity. All Bounty Hunter allies gain 100% defense while at full health. So that's why you want to mod the team for protection more than health. It doesn't matter how much health they have. If they've lost any of it, they're losing defense. So it's all about protection. Prevent the enemy from getting to your health. Whenever the enemy suffers a debuff or resists, so anything, if a debuff is attempted, doesn't matter if it lands or not, all allies recover 5% health and protection. The catch is, that is the Zeta. That's the Zeta part. And that's going to be the best Zeta on the team, in my opinion. So that is what his lead's going to do with the Zeta. That's why it's such a high priority to get the Zeta. When Bossk is in the leader slot, not the ally slot. By the way, whenever it says that, it's only talking about when you're borrowing a lead or borrowing a unit for like the campaign missions. Because obviously in normal cases the leadership doesn't apply if they're in ally slot, like the 4 slots that aren't a leader slot, but it's talking about that 6th slot. So just a side note there. The contract, deal damage to the weakest enemy 10 times. This can be harder, this can be easy. If there's a lot of tanks protecting the weakest enemy, or that enemy is stealthed all the time, it's hard. You gotta figure out who your enemy is, what's going to happen, how it's going to play out. Look at their health and protection. Weakest enemy is lowest combined health and protection. That's what it is. And then when you get the contract, the reward for the whole team is 50 speed for the rest of the battle and all their individual payouts. That's a great payout. And a lot of people don't even think about that, but 50 extra speed across the board, pretty nice. Next ability, and I'm not going to focus exclusively on the Zeta part because I don't think you have to get this, but it is pretty good. Bossk gets plus 50% defense and 50% max health while he is taunt, and gains 50% offense and 50% health steal when attacking a buffed enemy. The offense in health steal, not really a huge deal because he's not really a damage dealer. But then his payout is he's going to recover 5% health and protection at the start of his turn, and half that much whenever another bounty hunter ally starts their turn. So he is recovering protection and health left and right. A lot of times the first move you're going to do on his turn, on his first turn, you taunt. He's going to cleanse himself, recover some health, and gain frenzy. So even if you want to do this mass swarm we're going to look at in a second, you want to start with frenzy most of the time because another ally will do a special, and then it gets back to Bossk. It doesn't describe what frenzy is, but that's what it is. When an ally uses a special ability, you get 100% turn meter. And the taunt is for 3 turns. And then all bounty hunter allies can offense up for 2 turns, so more damage for everyone. Just fantastic across the board. In his first special, hunting party, this is a mass assist. It can stun. Bossk, I don't have him modded for high potency, so I don't get the stun a lot. You call all bounty hunter allies to assist, doing 60% less damage. So they're doing a lot less damage on the assist. But the big thing is getting his payout. 10 hits on the weakest enemy gets your payout. So you want to be targeting that little blue crosshairs above the weakest enemy and hit them as many times as you can. If the target ally target is the weakest enemy, reduce all assisting bounty allies cooldowns by 1. So even more reason to do that. So you definitely want to target that weakest enemy if at all possible. And if you can't, I wouldn't use that ability. I would hold on to it. And then the basic, pretty simple, but if you're attacking the weakest enemy, again, he's a bully. He likes to pick on the weakest. You do double damage, and it's guaranteed crit. So that is Bossk. Most important, people used to call him Bossk Daddy back in the day, but he is the most important to the team, in my opinion, by far. Next, we got Greef Karga, and by the way, every bounty hunter has a leadership ability. I'm not going to look at all of them, and he is no exception. So one of his best abilities, it is with the Zeta. Without the Zeta, it's giving retribution to all allies, bounty hunter allies, for 2 turns, and some health and protection recovery, doubled if payouts are active. If you have the payout active, 50% turn meter. So that is an awesome move once you have payout activated. With the Zeta, it's a cleanse. You cleanse your whole team, and you give tenacity up for 2 turns. So it's pretty solid. Also, his unique, he starts stealth at the beginning of the battle for 2 turns, so he's pretty safe for a little bit. Each time any bounty hunter ally earns their payout, all ally bounty hunters cooldowns are reduced by 1. So basically, when you hit payout, everyone's getting payout at once. Everyone's cooldowns are essentially reset unless they have a really high cooldown. And then he gains 10% counter chance, crit chance, avoidance, max health, and that's whenever any bounty hunter earns their payout. So 5 times that, 50% counter chance, 50% crit avoidance, and 50% max health. He's a pretty tanky guy. His specific payout, he's going to dispel all debuffs on all bounty hunter allies, and he recovers all his health and protection. He gains stealth return at the end of each of his turns, and when he's afflicted with a debuff, his cooldowns are reduced by 1. So he is a support on steroids once you hit payout. Before payout, a lot of stuff isn't happening, but just cleansing for days, cooldown reductions, it's amazing. So those are the strongest things about him. Another awesome ability is a mass assist here, and unlike Bossk, you get a damage bonus. You're not getting a damage penalty. I think this is his other Zeta. It's not mandatory. Without it, you're just gonna still dispel all debuffs, all buffs on the target enemy, call them to assist 10% more damage with your payouts activated. Without it, it's just flat. And if you defeat an enemy, you get a bunch of buffs, offensive buffs, offense up, defense penetration up, crit damage up, crit chance up, and health steal up. I think with the Zeta, that's 20% more damage, so it is not really necessary at all. And of course, his basic is pretty strong. He deals damage twice, and he inflicts daze. So daze is a great debuff if it does land, but even if it's resisted, you're healing up. And then 2 instances of damage helps to generate that payout. So in 3v3, I'm usually calling him to assist with Mando. And it's also recovering health and protection on its own. So it's both from resisting or inflicting a debuff and from the basic itself. But he is a quintessential support character, amazing for control and keeping your team healthy and clean. Also, Mando, I don't even have his lead Zeta on my 300 plus Zeta main account. You don't need it. The big thing for him is his payout. And this is, I said Bossk is the most important on the team, but it all kind of revolves around Mando. Getting his payout is a must. Once you get the payout, you immediately get Disintegrate, which is an insta-kill. He has to have crit chance and crit damage up. It's easy to do for him, but if he has buff immunity or he's being feared, stunned, it might not be there. But you do need to get those buffs up, and this can be reused again. The first time you hit payout, you get to do it immediately. But then after that, it's a cooldown of 8, but you can reduce it every time he does a critical hit. The rest of the payout is 50% crit damage. And that's it. So it's just the Disintegrate mainly for the payout, but it's amazing. His unique, this is his Zeta. Without the Zeta, whenever he scores a critical hit, he gains 30% turn meter at the start of the encounter. He has Bounty Hunter's Resolve, so just like the Fett's. With the Zeta, he's giving all Bounty Hunter allies half that turn meter, so 15% turn meter. It's a very nice Zeta. It's not the highest priority, but it is nice, all the extra turn meter. And all those assists from Bossk and Greef generating turn meter for Mando. And before I look at that, just his basic, he's going to get crit chance up for 2 turns. And if he gets a crit, another ally is going to get crit chance up. Crit chance up, not the most important buff, but with the turn meter he gains from getting crits and unlocking Disintegrate, you basically need to call him to assist before his turn if he doesn't have the buff, or you're not going to be able to do Disintegrate in his turn. His turn is kind of lackluster other than that. It's all about the Disintegrate. And then his special, you call an ally to assist and gain crit damage up. Pretty simple, pretty effective. Usually I am calling Greef because Greef hits twice, inflicts debuffs, and that does healing. The hit twice helps with the payout, and the debuffs help with healing up your team. So that is the big core 3. And now we're on to the flex 4 and 5 spots, starting with the Fetts this time. First of all, with Boba, he's going to get a bonus turn when you get Contract. He gets a bonus turn and then has 50 speed. So between Bossk and his lead, that's plus 100 speed. That's very fast. He has a solid payout and an additional defense penetration equal to 200% of his defense penetration. For me, at R8, his armor penetration almost 200 flat. So that is pretty dang good. That's going to be 600%. So he is a nice damage dealer once you get payout. His unique is mainly Bounty Hunter's Resolve. So it's at the start of the encounter whenever he defeats an enemy. I think the Zeta is recover 100% protection on a finishing blow. It's nice, but it's not mandatory, of course. One distinction is Boba and Jango can recover their Bounty Hunter's Resolve by killing someone. Mando cannot. OG Mando, he cannot get that back. If he loses it, he dies once it comes back. It's gone for good. Not going to dive into the lead here, but it's actually pretty solid. If you're doing 3v3, he's a decent lead because you get 50% max health equal to the potency of all Bounty Hunter allies, which is pretty strong, and he's got crit chance and crit damage for everybody. So just saying, just want to point out his lead because it's actually a pretty good plug and play. My favorite, my go-to on his first turn is usually this. So you do an AoE ability block. If you have the Omega, it's an ability block on the target for 2 turns. And since he can ignore taunts, unless they have stealth, you can pick who you want to ability block for 2 turns. So don't just spam the AoE because it's an AoE. You want to pick who you target. And a 50% chance to inflict damage over time for 2 turns. It's only 80% chance for ability block for everyone, but it is a 100% chance. I mean, plus the potency tenacity check. So that's a lot of debuffs too. That also is a healing function under Bossk leads, so be careful. If you need to save it for later, go ahead as well. Execute. This is an amazing move. It has very high potential. It has potential to one-shot Lord Vader when they has this 1 Datacron active where it's just protection up for every debuff. So the more buffs or debuffs on target enemy, you dispel them all and deal 30% more damage for each effect. So it just stacks up, and up forever. So the more debuffs, it gets to ridiculous proportions. So you want to pick and choose who to use this on. If they have a lot of buffs, you can use it as a utility function. If there's a taunt or something, use this to just dispel the taunt. But the maximum value is when they have tons of buffs and it can do a ton of damage. If it defeats a target enemy that can't be revived and it reduces cooldowns by 1, otherwise healing immunity for 2 turns cannot be evaded. So even if they have foresight, let it rip. Awesome move. The basic, it's a decent basic. Physical damage to target enemy with a 50% chance to attack again. 100% against scoundrels. I actually didn't realize that. That's interesting. Each attack is a 70% chance to inflict damage over time for 2 turns. So just decent basic. It's okay. Next, Fett, his father, Jango Fett. This guy hits hard. He is very strong. In part thanks to his unique, he has plus 100% defense penetration and 50% max health. This is something you should not overlook. You want to mod him for health. I'm pretty sure I have the health mod here. I do. Okay, I'm not embarrassing myself. But you mod him for health because he has 50% extra health. Well, actually, yeah, I think this applies after all the mods and everything. And once you have the Zeta, enemies defeated on his turn can't be revived. So that's an optional thing. At the start of the encounter, he gets bounty hunter's resolve and recovers it on finishing blow. So same with Boba, he can get it back. His payout, very strong. He gets 50% offense. That's crazy. That's before even the Omega. Once you have the Omega, he gains damage immunity for 2 turns, can't be dispelled or prevented. And that's also automatically granted if the leader is a separatist. So far, there are no separatist bounty hunters, so that would be kind of crazy if you could get a separatist bounty hunter. You could just start him off like that. People used to use his lead, but not as much anymore. It's about, you get speed and minus potency on people, but not talking about Jango lead bounty hunters. All 3 of his abilities have their own merits. So Shrapnel Blast has the highest potential for a single target damage. So it's a lot of damage each hit. You deal physical damage to a target enemy and random enemy. It can both be on the same target, and that's the biggest potential damage you can do. But it's healing immunity and stagger to target enemy. So you really want to kill someone, that's probably the best way to do it. But his basic is also a double attack if they're suffering a debuff. And he gains 15% offense for each enemy that's debuffed. So if everyone's debuffed, and you just want to make sure you're double attacking, this is a safe move to do a lot of damage, where this is kind of a variable move to do the most damage. But if there's not a ton of debuffs, Shrapnel Blast, easiest call to do a lot of damage to a target. Conflagration, I like to save this as kind of a heal. It doesn't do a ton of damage on each individual enemy, but it does inflict burning for three turns. Can't be evaded. The target will lose max health if they're suffering a debuff. On raid bosses, they just lose tenacity. It's whatever. Like why they any reduction of max health, they really had to nerf hard for Galactic Legends. They went through everything with a fine-tooth comb to shut that down. But yeah, he does a lot of damage, and that's without Mando on the team. He's probably the main damage engine. The Fets are really nice for that. I mean, you get the 1 insta kill, and then you're working on someone with the Fets. Now to talk about the other Flex 4 and 5, Fennec and Zam, and they can all be interchanged, mix and match. It's nothing about these 2 that's special together. But Zam, I'm not going to look at her whole kit. All I'm going to look at is this Omicron. If you decide to give her this Omicron for GAC, it is just stat boosts, and it is a very generous stat boost. She gains 60% increase to her offense, max health, and max protection for these thresholds. So 20% offense for each Scoundrel Attacker ally, max health for Scoundrel Support ally, and max protection for Scoundrel Tank ally. If you have the core of Bossk, Greef, and Mando, that's 1 of each. But with the Omicron, it's 60 of all those, 60%. She gains 5% speed for each other bounty hunter ally, so 20% speed to her. And then other bounty hunter allies gain 20% of her offense, max health, max protection, and speed. All the best stats, basically. So they're going to be more durable, do more damage, but more importantly, have a lot of speed. 20% of her combined speed, it's 1/5. It's like a mine, just round up 300. That's a 60 speed, plus whatever she's taken from everyone else and boosting, plus 60 speed to everybody. So that's why I use her. Like her other abilities aren't that big a deal. It's landing bombs once in a while, evasion down, blowing up bombs with her basic. Nothing too special. My Fennec kind of sucks. I have not been I have just been stripping all the mods, all the good mods off her for a while, so they're not great. But Fennec is an interesting character. I mean, her lead is used to take down Lord Vader, because you get to contract fast. Her lead, it's dispelling debuffs. So like Greef takes a turn, he dispel debuffs, and the whole lead is about her just getting extra stats for the lack of other allies. You lose 25% of the stat bonuses for each other bounty hunter ally. So in 3v3, she's naturally kind of a better lead because you don't have to like undersize to get anywhere. Big thing about her basic deals damage 5 times. If the enemy has no protection, it deals 50% more damage. So this is fantastic with Bossk lead too, and that's why I use her a lot, mostly on my main account, because you call an assist, 5 instances of damage just from her assisting. So that gets Mando to pay out real fast. Her special, you deal special damage to all but the weakest enemy, and you're going to land Armor Shred. If she has her payout, you get an additional instance of Armor Shred, but like they don't say payout, they say if she has Seasoned Veteran. And I had to look over the kit for a second. The Seasoned Veteran is described here, but is granted in her payout. Seasoned Veteran allows her to ignore taunt and get additional effects on her abilities. The unique, she's gaining 10% offense until the end of the encounter anytime she gains tenacity up. It's mainly through Greef's special. And I think there's a way through Boba Fett, Sign of Jango or something. I don't know. I don't really use her with Boba Fett, Sign of Jango. I'm not the guy to ask about that. I don't have his Omicrons. But there's a lot of bonuses for Boba Fett, Sign of Jango. And whenever an ally loses Overconfident, she gains Terminator. Overconfident is granted in AoE. All allies get Overconfident, which is technically a debuff, but the only negative effect is minus 20% defense. You get 50% offense, 10% speed, and 15% evasion. It is a debuff in name only. It is a buff for all intents and purposes. So yeah, that's the big thing about her. Tons of extra damage if they have no protection. That's why she's so good against Lord Vader. 5 hits for that contract, Armor Shred, and ignoring taunt. So she's pretty intense. Now to talk about Zeta and Relic Order. So let's start with the Fets at this point. I would say Relic Order, definitely Bossk first. Not only is he the tank protecting all other allies, he has a great ship. And I forgot to talk about his second Zeta. If an enemy has protection, the weakest enemy still has protection, he's going to gain his taunt back. So I forgot to talk about that. I was like, oh, this is a Zeta, you don't absolutely need it. Then I forgot to go back to it. Him first, probably Mando second, because you really don't want him to die and lose his bounty hunter's resolve because he can't get it back. Greef is a super solid gear 12, gear 11. Just load him up with protection mods because he's still super durable. You don't need him to deal damage. He is just fine without it. So you can hold off on him just because he's so strong even without it. But for damage, I'd say Jango is the best. And Relics, his damage really skyrockets. And then Boba Fett. Boba Fett has his own merits for Executor farms and stuff like that. But I would say Bossk, then Mando, then Jango, Boba, and then Greef. If we're throwing Fennec in there, I'd put her around the same place that Jango is. She's the damage dealer. And then Zam, I mean, it depends, right? Like, I think the Omicron is more valuable, more rare than the Relic ability. So if you did give her the Omicron, then you give it to her at that point. But it just depends. If you're not there, then don't even worry about that. Zeta Order, Bossk's lead first, like I said, very, very important. After that, I would say Greef's special for cleansing. So dispelling all debuffs and getting tenacity up is really big. You don't have a whole team cleanse otherwise, except for when you get payouts. So that's super valuable. Next, I would do Mandos, actually, just to give extra turn meter out to the whole team. They're not a turn meter trained team like Imperial Troopers or anything, but that definitely helps cycle you around. And then, the Fets, they're completely optional, in my opinion. You need a specific reason to want. Don't worry about the leadership if you're not going to use the lead. That's just the easiest call to not worry about. But if you're using them all the time to fight teams that are having revives, Generate Revan, Night Sisters, then you might want to pick that up. It's kind of optional, an optional fourth. And Boba is kind of a luxury. Recover protection on finishing blow. It's very, very much not necessary under Bossk because you're recovering protection a lot. It's kind of nice to have. For Fennec Shand, her Zeta is actually this part, the turn meter from losing Overconfident. I don't think it's a big deal. I'd throw it on Not really necessary. It's only after she's done her AoE, and then only when you get cleansed. So if you do a full cleanse, she's gonna get Terminator. But it's like you want the debuff there anyway, because it's so good. But yeah, that is it for the abilities, Relic, Priority, and Zeta order. Now let's look at some mods. And as per usual, I'm gonna look at my mods and then look at the competitive mods. Starting with Bossk. Bossk. And I look at him in my roster views very frequently. Bossk, you want lots of speed and you want lots of protection. The health, like I said when I was going over his kit, you don't need to worry about it. You need to be at full health, which means keep your protection maxed, and then speed. And I also think the secondary set for him, other than the speed set, is defense set. You don't care about health set because you don't want your health to be touched. You want your protection to be stretched even further, the value of that protection. And the only way to do that in a set is defense. The more defense, if you just have health mods, your protection value is not modified at all. But if you have defense, the rate at which that protection goes down is decreased, if that makes sense. I don't really care about potency. I think it's an outdated way to mod him to go for tenacity. It was back when you used him to counter, or put him on defense, and Jedi training Rey would dispel his taunt. But I don't think tenacity matters too much on him. Greef is actually very similar to Bossk, except I think you don't care as much about the defense. You just want to care about speed and protection. And optimally, you want Bossk to be a little bit faster than Greef. I have been lazy and have been managing that. But you want Bossk to taunt, Greef to go right after, call a mass assist, and then Bossk will get to go again and call a mass assist too. I've been lazy. I let Greef get faster than Bossk. I need to change that. But see, I don't even have a matching second set because all I mainly care about on him is speed. You also want protection, but I have also been slacking on that myself. I gave him some defense sets because they were fast, and he's usually not the first one dying. So, I mean, what's nice about him, he's stealth, so he hides himself well. You don't need to worry about damage. Potency is something you could do because he is inflicting daze on his basic. But again, I'm not loading up on potency. I mainly just care about the speed. Protection's great. At lower gear, protection is actually really good for him because he just has high base protection. Mando, I just have speed and crit chance. I actually have a good bit of speed on him. Crit chance because those crits generate the turn meter. And he's not dealing a bunch of damage on his own. It's all about the insta-kill. And I also gave him a lot of protection primaries because I want him to stay alive. And I want him to get crits and take turns. So that's mainly for him. Pretty simple, in my opinion. You don't need to load him up with offense or crit damage or anything. Jango. I think you want offense and you want health. Lots of offense, crit damage, triangle, health. So typical damage dealer. Almost all damage dealers, you want a crit damage triangle. But for him, I like offense other than crit chance and crit damage. I think he'd be fine with crit damage, honestly, one of the two. And then just whatever speed you can, but health over protection. That's something not every character really needs. Boba Fett, I got? Offense and health. He's not a very high priority for me right now. I do have the crit damage triangle. And there's some decent offense. At least he's over 100 speed. But I would think most people are modding him for damage. Fennec, I briefly showed her mods. They kind of suck. And then Zam, I've prioritized her, but just speed and whatever stats you want to pass on. Mainly speed. And now let's look at the competitive modding scene. And starting with Bossk. And here's something I think a lot of the player base just misses because they have a lot of health sets and they've got good speed and they just forget about the defense. So 40% of the top 1,000 Kyber players at this point in time are using speed and health sets, where I really don't think the health is helping too much. Speed and defense is, usually I kind of defer to the masses on it, but this I completely adhere to. Defense set is better as a secondary set. But pretty much everyone has speed. I don't know what people are doing with the 3% are using all health sets. Doesn't make sense. Dominant speed, but some are using protection on the arrow. On the triangle, dominant protection. Circle, dominant protection. And cross, not quite as dominant with the protection as I think, 69% and 12.65% are using tenacity. Again, I think that's kind of outdated, but it's all about survivability. Like barely anyone is, like 1.7% put offense on the triangle, 1.3% put offense on the cross. Just don't do it. Greef. Speed and health. I think the same thing kind of applies, but like I said, I'm not too worried about it. Like, he's not taking that many hits. He stealths. But it's all about speed. Like, 10% of people aren't even worrying about a secondary set. It's just speed. 61% are using speed and health. And again, that's because most of the player base has a very deep pool of health mods, and a lot of them are fast, and it's just a great supplementary set. 6% speed, defense. Yeah, these are all single digits. It's so dominant. It's pretty much most players, their fastest set they're going to come up with across the board, like in volume, is speed and health. Speed, 93%. Triangle. It's protection, like I said, but it's, it's 37%. It's not overwhelming. So it's all survivability stats, like at the top of it. Crit chance, 13%. It's kind of interesting. I don't know how that matters too much, but something to survive. 2 to 1 protection on health. 39% protection, 80% health, defense, tenacity. Something about survivability. He is not dealing damage, so I just think he's easier to mod because you really mainly just care about speed. Most players are using crit damage and crit chance with Mando. I still like the speed because I just want him getting to his turn sooner, and I don't care about the damage he's dealing. This is used by 32% of the top players. About 15% use all crit chance, and that's fair because there's a lot of crit avoidance out there these days. But most people are having something to do with crits. This one's kind of a head scratcher to me. 12% using crit damage and health. I think you want crit chance in there somewhere for sure. Most people are using speed, 84%. I don't get why offense protection. I mean, keeping them alive, sure. A lot of people are using crit chance on the triangle, and I think that makes sense. I'm more worried about him dying than not critting. So I have protection. I'm in that like 9.5%. Crit damage, again, I'm like kind of whatever. Protection, a lot more protection than health. And then on the cross, it's kind of close between offense and protection, but those are pretty dominant. Boba. Crit damage, crit chance. And wow, not many people use offense at all on him. A lot of people are just using crit damage. I don't think it's a huge deal if you went to offense. I don't know why it is. People just use crit damage, but maybe someone can tell me. 42% are using crit damage with crit chance, 13% with a potency, but most of it is just crit damage. Pretty dominant speed, but some offense. I mean, and a lot of these players, if they're using Boba Fett, they use him with Java, so he's getting assists all the time. So it's not really like the context that a new player would use a Boba Fett. Triangle, mostly crit damage or offense. He's a typical damage dealer. More using protection than health on the circle. Pretty dominant offense, some potency on the cross. And that makes sense. I mean, landing those debuffs, the ability block is very nice. Jango, crit damage and crit chance. Just like Boba. So between this, yeah, it's like over 50% are using crit damage sets. Some people are using offense. They're kind of close. The overall best set for damage is offense, unless there's an exception, but crit damage gets its potential is outweighed sometimes, but he has a lot of defense penetration, so maybe that does benefit crit damage. Only 65% speed, so 21% of people are giving up that speed arrow for offense, and he does do a ton of damage. But also most players are using him with trench now, so that's what we're looking at, and he's kind of the tank function, and they don't want him fast, and there's a lot of times. Dominant crit damage, still more protection than health, but just in general the player base has a bias towards protection mods on the circle, but it is closer to health getting the majority, but you do want health on him for sure on that circle. And then lots of offense for the the cross, some potency, some protection. I don't like seeing protection here higher than health. That's a no-no to me. And then Fennec, it's all about damage. Like, even the arrow, 57% of players are using offense instead of speed. Offense, offense, offense. Because she doesn't have a high crit chance. I forgot to talk about that when going into her kit. She doesn't have a high crit chance. She does special damage. It's all about the offense. And beating Lord Vader, that's what mainly endgame players use her for. And Lord Vader's not getting crit at low health. Offense. Protection, whatever. Offense. So it's all about offense. Zam is speed. It's an empty clip speed. Like, speed, 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 speed. People just care about how fast she is. See, it's pretty even. No super dominant on the triangle, although offense is the highest because she's sharing her offense. And then offense, potency, protection, all kind of even splits. So that is the competitive modding. With 7 characters, I feel like this video is going long and my mouth is feeling dry, but now time to look at counters. So starting with what they beat, what you can use them on, I've been looking at in this series lately, GAC Insight, all leagues except Kyber, and then all divisions. So seeing what more newer or mid-game, you know, not super late game players are using. So I filtered by Bossk, Greef, and Mando just to see what people are using, and a lot of people are using both Fetts here that I'm seeing. Not good against Geos, probably not going to go with that. 73% on Mother Talzin, so Night Sisters, even with Merit in there. And that is big value because Disintegrate prevents revives, Jango, if you have a Zeta, prevents revives, and Boba Fett's Rocket prevents revives. So that is probably one of the higher value picks that you could do, is against Night Sisters. But definitely want the Jango Zeta if you're doing that. Phoenix without Rex is kind of whatever. Grievous not really working. Ewoks, but that's no there's no Princess Nisa there. Mirror is kind of iffy. This is Bailey looking just like Night Sisters. Like I'm not seeing Phoenix with Rex. Ewoks, Karth, they do well. Not Padme. So I mean, the way I use it in Grand Arena is like a hit squad for a cleanup crew. Like you just take out one enemy. CLS not going well. Bad Edge, no. So they're, you know, not looking too great. It's been all this time talking about bounty hunters, but in GAC they're not doing all that much. I think Night Sisters is by far the best value for them, and that's most common. Jawas, someone said in Jawas. One interaction against Darth Revan, it can be nice because Darth Revan generates a lot of debuffs on his team for themselves, which keeps your team pretty topped off on health and protection. Now, you'd have to be very reliced up in comparison to the enemy to be able to survive a long enough time to get a contract and kill Malik or something, but it's something. They're beating Tuskens, that's not bad. I wonder, there's no Omicron active in 5v5. Yeah, so not too much that they're actually doing too much with or against in Grand Arena 5v5. 3v3, probably more value to them, but I don't have time to look at everything. What's good against them in 5v5? So I filtered by Greef and Mando, I think. Or did I just unselect both of them? I did unselect both of them. So CLS beats them, Geonosians beat them. Greef is pretty much the reverse of all the other sides. Shouldn't be too hard to find counters for bounty hunters, honestly. I think they're an offense team, mainly offense only. But they're good for a lot of PvE events, you know, Smuggler's Run, no, not Smuggler's Run, the Scoundrel events and Galactic Bounties. They can do a lot of stuff. They have an Assault Battle, Rebel Roundup, if you don't have good Imperial Troopers. Yeah, a lot of stuff is beating them. Not Wampa, because they'll get the contract very easily and disintegrate him because he's automatic, the default weakest enemy. They get contract and zap him. Yeah, not looking too great in GAC for bounty hunters, even in the lower leagues. But anyway, let's move on to a demonstration. And for this demonstration, we're going to go to Galactic Challenge. A Galactic Challenge versus Malgus. But Bounty Hunters are kind of outmatched in this one, so I actually have to go all the way to the Gear 12 tier just to demonstrate how it works. I can demonstrate in this and show you they're going to lose. Show you some of the difficulties. So what you want to do with Bossk is hit the weakest enemy 10 times and get contract. And that would be ideal here because you can take out Malgus, who's the big bad on the team. And that's what the Bounty Hunters work well at. If they take out one big bad and then pick apart the rest slowly. I can't get to Talon because she is stealthed and there's even 2 taunters. So if I try to get around it, I'm not going to be able to get to her in time. Unless I can, you know, make Sith Empire Trooper the weakest. Yeah, I can hit with an AoE, I can hit Talon. But I also made her even weaker, so it makes it even less likely I'll be able to get my contract. And then Revan feared everybody. So we're just stuck. Now she is not stealth, but I still have a taunter in here. And then they killed Boba. This is an insta-kill thing, kind of messes up my demonstration. But let's move on to a weaker tier and try to get it. Still Talon is the weakest, but we're not going to be stuck behind a second taunt, so we can get rid of this taunt. And then we can work on someone else and try to make them the weakest enemy. And there we go. Let's see who's up. So I can taunt, get my frenzy up, and do more damage, and then get another AoE, or just let them kill me. I only have 10%. This is your payout progress. I only have 10% right now. That's pathetic. Because this team is all about getting the payout. Jango can ignore taunts. So that's really nice with getting payouts too with the Fets. They can ignore taunts. Okay, killed. Got it pretty easily. The step down from just one tier to the next is crazy. I have to use this because otherwise they'll use it. But yeah, this demonstration doesn't feel like that helpful because it's been either overwhelming defeat or victory. But Mando has his payout, and that's what all leads to it. If I was able to get off the ground in the next higher tier, that would be better, because they actually have Zetas. But yeah, Bounty Hunters, that's how they work. It's more of a cleanup team at the end of the game. In GAC, a lot better with Zam Omicron. Like, before Zam Omicron, they were really falling out of favor. So the higher up you get, you definitely want that Omicron. Otherwise, they have to kind of punch down a bit. So I end this video feeling less good about Bounty Hunters than I have in the past. But it's still important to understand them. And I hope that this helped you do just that. Thank you so much for watching, and see you later.